The ship is sinking. You know this. Everyone on this deck knows this. The water has found the guardrail. The bow is gone into the dark. The people around you are holding each other and crying and staring at the lifeboats that are already gone, and you are standing in the middle of all of it with a violin under your chin. Nobody asked you to play. Nobody told you to stop. You draw the bow across the strings, and you play. This is the story of a man who made a decision that no training prepared him for, and no rule required of him. Wallace Hartley was 33 years old, from a small town in Yorkshire called Brighouse, and he played the violin the way some people breathe, not because he chose to in any particular moment, but because it was simply what he was. He had come aboard the Titanic as bandmaster, leader of the ship's orchestra, a prestigious appointment for a young musician who was saving money to get married. He was going to play a few voyages, save enough, go home to Maria, start the rest of his life. On the night of April 14th, 1912, Wallace Hartley did not get into a lifeboat. He stood on the deck of a sinking ship with 7 other musicians, and he played music until the ocean took them. No one fully understands why. There are theories, duty, instinct, the particular psychology of a man for whom music was more real than almost anything else. What is known is that passengers who survived the Titanic spoke about the music for the rest of their lives. They said it was the thing that kept the panic from becoming something worse. They said it was the last beautiful thing. They said that in the final minutes, in the dark, with the water at their feet, the band played on. In this story, you are the bandmaster. The music is yours. This is your last concert. You have been playing since you were 7 years old. This is not a metaphor or a way of saying that music came naturally. It is simply true. At 7 years old in Brighouse, Yorkshire, but your father put a small violin in your hands and showed you where to put your fingers, and the sound that came out was not good, was in fact terrible. Was the specific terrible sound of a child learning something that requires years to become beautiful. But you did not put it down. This is the fact that explains everything that comes after. You did not put it down. Your father was a church choir master. Music in your house was not entertainment, not background. It was the primary language, the thing the family used to understand the world and its harder moments. When your grandmother died, your father played. When there was joy, your father played. You absorbed this early. The understanding that music was not decoration, but function, that it served purposes that words could not always reach. By the time you were a young man, you were good enough that the question of what to do with your life resolved itself quietly without much drama. You would play, you would teach, you would lead. Your father understood this even if he worried about the practical dimensions of it. A musician's life was not a guaranteed life, and Yorkshire was not London, and the world was full of talented young men who had not managed to turn their talent into a living. But you were not worried. You had the violin, and you had the certainty that came from being very good at the thing you loved. And this combination in a young man produces a specific kind of confidence that is not arrogance, but something more like faith. You believed in the music. The music had never yet failed to be there when you needed it. You thought about this sometimes, the reliability of music, the way it was always present, always responding, always exactly what you put into it. People were complicated. Circumstances changed. Music was constant. You put the bow to the strings, and it answered. Brighouse is a small place, the kind of town where everyone knows what everyone else is doing, and this is mostly a comfort and occasionally a constraint. You grew up known as the choir master's son, then as the boy who could play, then as the young man who was going to do something with it. The weight of that expectation was not heavy exactly. It was more like a current, something that moved you in a direction that happened to be the direction you wanted to go anyway. What you wanted was simple: to play well, to be heard, to make a living at it, and eventually to bring Maria into a house that was yours and spend the rest of your life in that house with her and whatever music came through it. That was all. That was everything. It seemed, on the morning you boarded the Titanic in Southampton, entirely achievable. There are 8 of you. You have been given this group of men assembled from various ships and agencies, none of whom knew each other particularly well before Southampton, and in the first days at sea, you have been doing what bandmasters always do, taking the measure of each person, learning how they play and how they listen and how they respond to direction, learning where the weaknesses are and where the strengths are, and how to arrange both into something that sounds like a single thing instead of 8 separate things. Jock Hume on violin, young, 21, from Dumfries, plays with more energy than precision, but the energy is infectious, and precision can be developed. John Woodward on cello, quiet and methodical, the kind of player who never surprises you, but also never fails you. Fred Clark on double bass, large hands, though completely steady. The others distributed across their instruments, each of them with their particular qualities and particular habits. All of them good enough. Some of them better than that. You play twice a day. Afternoon tea in the first-class reception room, 4 to 5. Evening in the first-class lounge, 8 to 10. The repertoire is light. Popular songs, waltzes, selections from operettas. The kind of music that fills a room pleasantly without demanding too much attention. The first-class passengers of the Titanic are not here to be moved. They are here to have a pleasant crossing, and pleasant is what you provide. This doesn't bother you. You have played enough varied rooms to understand that music serves different purposes in different contexts, and there is no shame in providing exactly what a context requires. The music you play for yourself, alone, in your cabin late at night, that is one thing. The music you play in the first-class lounge for people who are drinking their after-dinner brandy is another thing. Both are real. Both matter. The ship itself is extraordinary. You have crossed on other liners, the Mauretania, the Lusitania, but nothing like this. The scale of it, the particular luxury, the way it moves through the water, with an almost arrogant smoothness, as if the ocean is being asked to step aside rather than being navigated. The officers speak about it with a pride that borders on reverence. The passengers speak about it as if they have always expected to travel this well, and have simply, finally, been given the appropriate vessel. You find the whole thing slightly absurd and entirely wonderful, in the way you find most extreme human endeavors. Your cabin is small and functional and perfectly adequate, and from it, on calm evenings, you can hear the ocean. Not clearly. There is too much ship between you and the water, too many decks, too much machinery. But you can feel it. The particular quality of being surrounded by deep water. The knowledge that outside these walls is something vast and cold and completely indifferent to the elegance of the rooms above it. You play your violin in the cabin sometimes, late, after the evening performance. Not the repertoire, not the waltzes and the popular tunes. Your own things, pieces you have been working on privately for years, things that don't have audiences yet. Maria will hear them eventually. You have promised her this. You think about Maria every day, and not with anxiety or longing exactly, more with the particular warmth of something settled and sure. The knowledge of a good thing waiting for you at the end of this crossing and the next and the one after that, and then the ending of crossings and the beginning of the other thing, the home thing, the life you are building toward one voyage at a time. 3 more crossings, you have decided, maybe 4, then enough money, then Maria, then home. The ship moves through the dark North Atlantic and you sleep well, and you do not know that 3 more crossings will never happen. The day is unremarkable in almost every respect. You wake to the same gentle vibration of the engines that has accompanied every morning of this crossing. Dress in the small mirror of your cabin. Eat breakfast in the crew mess. Good food. The Titanic does not economize on feeding its staff. The morning passes. You go over the evening's program with a couple of the men. Nothing formal. Just the easy coordination of musicians who have worked together long enough to anticipate each other. The afternoon performance goes well. The reception room is full. Sunday afternoon. Nothing much else to do on a crossing. And the passengers are in good spirits. The particular good spirits of wealthy people who have spent several days in extreme comfort and are beginning to feel the comfort as their natural state. And a woman in a blue dress stops near you between pieces and says the music is lovely, and you thank her with the small professional smile you have developed for exactly this purpose. After tea, you walk the deck. It is cold. Genuinely, seriously cold. The kind of cold that makes you aware of every inch of exposed skin, your face and your hands, the strip of neck between your collar and your ear. You walk quickly, hands in your pockets, watching the ocean. The sea is extraordinary today, flat as a table, barely a ripple. The water so still that the reflection of the sky in it is almost perfect. Gray meeting gray, at a horizon line so clean it looks drawn. Several passengers are on deck despite the cold, wrapped in borrowed blankets from the stewards, sitting in the deck chairs they have claimed as theirs for the crossing. Yet you pass them and they nod back, and you complete your circuit and go inside and feel the warmth of the ship close around you. At dinner, the officers' table is in good spirits. Someone mentions the ice warnings. There have been several messages from other ships over the course of the day. The wireless operators passing on coordinates of ice fields to the north. But the tone in which it is mentioned is not alarmed. It is mentioned the way weather is mentioned, as a condition to be navigated, something that the professionals of the ship are fully equipped to handle. Captain Smith has sailed these waters more times than anyone can count. The Titanic is the finest ship in the world. No one is worried. You are not worried. At 8 o'clock, the orchestra assembles in the first-class lounge, and you raise your bow, and the evening begins. And the program for Sunday evening is slightly more formal than the weeknight programs. You have added a couple of the better pieces, things with a little more weight, appropriate for the last full evening of the crossing. Tomorrow night they will see the lights of New York. Tonight is the last real night at sea, and the first-class lounge reflects this. The passengers dressed a little more carefully. The mood a little more charged with the awareness of ending. You play well. The ensemble plays well. Jock's energy is controlled tonight, channeled, and it lifts the whole group. You watch the room over your bow. The couples, the families, the lone travelers reading or nursing their drinks. And you read the room the way you always read rooms, adjusting tempo and dynamic to what the people in front of you seem to need. But what they seem to need tonight is simply this: music. The particular comfort of music, the way it fills the space between people and softens it, the way it makes a room feel like more than a room. You give them that. You have always been good at giving people that. At 10:15, you lower your bow for the last time, and the applause comes, and you bow, and the evening is done. You do not know. It is the last normal thing you will do. You are in your cabin when it happens. Not asleep. You rarely sleep quickly after a performance. The music staying in your hands and your arms for an hour or more after you put the violin down. Your body not yet persuaded that the work is finished. You are lying on your bunk reading, or trying to read. The words on the page doing what words do, when your mind is partly elsewhere, arriving without quite landing. The shudder is subtle. It travels through the hull from somewhere forward, through the steel of the walls and the frame of your bunk and into your spine. A vibration that lasts perhaps 3 seconds and then is gone. Not violent. Nothing falls. Nothing shifts. The kind of thing that in a lesser ship you might attribute to a heavy wave, a piece of debris, some ordinary collision of vessel and ocean. But this is not a lesser ship. And this ship does not shudder. In 5 days at sea, you have not felt the Titanic do anything so irregular. And the regularity of it, the smoothness, has become your baseline. Your body has learned what this ship feels like. What just happened is not what this ship feels like. You sit up. The engines change. Not dramatically, and they don't stop, not immediately. But there is something different in the sound of them. A shift in register that you catch, because you are a musician and shifts in register are what you listen for. They are doing something different. Being asked to do something different. You put on your coat and go out into the corridor. The corridor is quiet. A steward passing at the far end, moving quickly, not meeting eyes. Through the walls of the ship, the sound of the engines changing further. Slowing now. Definitively slowing. You feel the forward momentum of the ship bleeding away through the soles of your feet. You go up. There is a moment climbing the stairs toward the deck when you know. Not the facts, you don't have the facts yet. Don't know about the iceberg or the extent of the damage or the rate at which the water is entering the hull. But you know in the way that you sometimes know things before you can explain knowing them. The way you knew once in the middle of a performance that something was wrong with the second violin, 2 bars before the wrong note arrived. Something is wrong. The ship is wrong. You keep climbing. The deck tells you everything your body already suspected. Not in one moment. It assembles itself in pieces over the first minutes you stand there. The cold hitting you immediately and thoroughly. At the North Atlantic air finding every gap in your coat with the efficiency of something that has been doing this a very long time. The cold is so severe that for a moment it occupies all your attention. The simple brute fact of it. Your face contracting, your hands going instantly to the pockets of your coat. Then you see the officers. You have been on enough ships to know how officers move when nothing is wrong. The particular economy of professional men going about professional business. Unhurried, certain. The motion of people for whom everything is under control. What you are seeing now is not that. The officers on this deck are moving with a different quality, controlled still, trained, nothing that would alarm a passenger who didn't know what to look for, but faster, more directed. At the specific movement of people who know exactly what needs to be done and are doing it without any of the usual latitude for anything else. The davits are being prepared. You stand very still for a moment and look at the davits and at the officers working them and at the covered shapes of the lifeboats, and you understand, with a completeness that does not require anyone to say it to you, what is happening. A steward passes you with an armful of lifebelts. He doesn't meet your eyes. You reach out and stop him. How bad? You ask. He looks at you for a moment. His face is doing the careful thing that faces do when they are trying not to give away more than they are supposed to. Put your lifebelt on, sir, he says, and goes. You stand on the deck of the Titanic in the early minutes of April 15th, 1912, met with the cold Atlantic air in your lungs and the knowledge settling into you like cold water itself. Finding every space, filling every gap. The ship is going to sink. You have time to think a series of things very quickly, the way the mind works when it receives information it was not prepared for. You think about the lifeboats. There are not enough. You know this somehow. The number is wrong for the number of people on this ship. You think about Maria waiting in England. You think about Brighouse. You think about your violin, which is in your cabin, and about whether there is anything to be done with a violin on a night like this. You think, there is. You go back inside to get it. You find most of the band in the corridor outside your cabin. They have come to the same understanding you have, by the same process of observation and inference. and they are standing in the corridor, in various states of dress, with the particular stillness of men who know something is happening and are waiting to understand what is required of them. Jock is there, his youth very visible suddenly, his face showing things that his usual energy normally conceals. Woodward holding his cello case with both hands, as if he has picked it up and not yet decided what to do with it. The others arranged along the walls, looking at you. They are looking at you because you are the bandmaster. This is what bandmasters are for. Not just the tempo and the repertoire and the positioning on the bandstand, but this. At the moments when the musicians need to know what musicians are supposed to do, you look at each of them. You do not make a speech. You are not a man given to speeches. You are a man given to music, and this moment does not need a speech. It needs something else. Get your instruments, you say. One of them, Clark, the double bass, the steadiest of them, says, "Where are we playing?" You think about this for a moment. Not long. "Wherever we're needed," you say. They go for their instruments. You go into your cabin and open the case and take out the violin and hold it for a moment in both hands. The wood is warm from the cabin. The strings are perfectly tuned. You check them after the evening performance, as you always do, as you always will. You put it under your arm and go back into the corridor. No one ordered you to play. And this is important, and it is something that will be said many times in the years after, that the Titanic's musicians were not ordered to perform, that there was no regulation, no instruction from any officer, that what happened on the deck of the sinking ship in the early hours of April 15th happened because 8 men decided, individually and together, that it was what they were going to do. You decided it. They followed, not because they had to, because they understood what you understood, which was this: there was nothing else. The lifeboats were launching, and there were not enough lifeboats, and the water was coming, and there was nothing any of you could do about any of that. But there was the music. There was always the music, and a room full of frightened people, or a deck full of frightened people. It is a room that music can reach when nothing else can. You had known this since you were 7 years old. You knew it now. You begin outside the first-class entrance, where the crowd is thickest. Ragtime first. You make this choice deliberately, consciously, because ragtime is alive and forward-moving, and it does something to the body. A mild lift, a small instinctive response to rhythm that operates below the level of thought. People who are frightened and standing still are in danger of becoming a different kind of frightened, the kind that moves in sudden directions and does not think. Ragtime asks the body to tap its foot, and a body that is tapping its foot is a body that is, for the moment, not running. The cold is extraordinary. Your fingers are a problem. You knew they would be, and you blow on them between pieces. Flex them. Keep the blood moving as much as you can. A violinist's fingers are everything. Well, without sensation in the fingertips, the intonation goes, the precision goes, the music becomes approximate rather than exact. You play with slightly less than your best, and your slightly less than best is still very good, and in this context, very good is more than sufficient. People stop. This is what music does. It stops people, creates a small gravity, pulls attention toward it. On the deck of a sinking ship in the middle of the night, this quality is more pronounced than you have ever felt it. The passengers pausing in their movement toward the lifeboats, not for long, not long enough to endanger them, just a moment of turning toward the sound, and registering it with something that is not quite surprise and is not quite comfort, but is somewhere between the two. A woman looks at you while you play. She is perhaps 50, well-dressed, and a lifebelt buckled over her evening coat in the particular awkward way of someone who has put on a lifebelt for the first time. Her husband is beside her, holding her arm. She looks at you, and you look at her over your bow, and you hold her gaze for a few bars, and something passes between you that you could not name but that both of you feel. The acknowledgement of what this is. The particular solidarity of two people in an impossible situation who are choosing, for this moment, the same thing. Presence. Here. She turns away toward the lifeboats. You play on. The others are extraordinary tonight. Jock plays with everything he has. The energy that sometimes outpaces his precision is doing no such thing tonight, is instead perfectly contained, perfectly directed, the fire in him finding its proper shape. Woodward on the cello is steady as he always is, and the steadiness is its own kind of courage. The courage of the person who does not change their quality when the context changes. You draw strength from them, and they draw strength from you. And the music that comes out of this exchange is better than it has any right to be, given the cold and the tilting deck and the knowledge that all of you carry. You think of something your father told you once about the purpose of music in a church. He said, "The music is not for the people who are happy. The people who are happy don't need it. The music is for the people who are struggling, the ones who came in holding something too heavy to carry alone. And what the music does is it carries some of the weight for them, just for those minutes, just long enough for them to remember that they are not alone in it." You understood this abstractly then. You understand it completely now. You play. There were moments in the hours you played on that deck when you could have stopped. Not formally. No one was going to stop you. No one was going to tell you that you had done enough, that your obligation was fulfilled, that you were free to go look for a place in a boat. But there were moments when the rational part of you, the part that counts exits and assessments risk, and understands the physics of a hull taking on water, presented you with the option. You did not take it. This is not because you were unaware of what was happening. You were completely aware. The awareness was present in every bar you played. A constant background knowledge that the ship was going and that you were on it. You were not playing from ignorance. You were playing from something else. Something that had been in you since Brighouse. Since your father's hands on a violin. Since the first time you understood that music was not decoration, but the thing itself. The real thing. The human thing. The thing that made people less alone in whatever they were in. You were doing the only thing you knew how to do perfectly. You were playing. The water finds the deck, not a wave. There are no waves tonight. The ocean is as flat and still as it has been all evening, as still as the deck officer noted in the log before everything changed. The water simply arrives quietly from forward, spreading across the planking with the patient certainty of something that has been working toward this for over 2 hours and has now arrived at its destination. It is cold. Even through your boots you feel the cold of it, the specific cold of ocean water at 2 degrees Celsius, and a cold that makes the cold of the air above it seem almost moderate by comparison. The remaining passengers are moving aft. The crew is moving aft. The whole remaining population of the ship is moving toward the stern, the high end, the part that is still above the water, moving with the specific controlled desperation of people who understand what is happening and have nowhere left to go. You look at the men beside you. They are looking at you. All of them. Every one. Jock and Woodward and Clark and all the others, their instruments in their hands. Their faces doing the thing faces do when there is nothing left to protect them from what they know. Not panic. Something beyond panic. Something on the other side of it. The place you reach when you have passed through every ordinary response and come out somewhere very quiet. And you think about what to play. This is the question. It is still, even now, the question. What does this moment need? What do these people, the ones still on this deck, the ones who are not going to reach a boat, what does music give them in the next few minutes that they cannot give themselves? The answer comes to you without deliberation. You know this hymn. You have known it since childhood. since your father's choir, since Sunday mornings in Brighouse with the organ and the voices. You know it in the way you know the things that were given to you before you were old enough to choose them. The deep involuntary knowing of early learning. You raise your bow. You play the opening bars of Nearer My God to Thee. The men hear it and join you, one by one, their instruments finding the melody, the harmony filling in beneath it, and the hymn assembling itself in the cold air above the rising water. There is a quality to music played in extremis that does not exist in any other context. You have played at funerals, at moments of grief, in rooms where the music was carrying something heavy. But this is different from all of those. This is music played at the absolute edge of everything, with the water at your feet and the ship going beneath you, and nowhere left to go, and what comes out of the instruments in this moment has a quality that you cannot name, and have never heard before, and will not hear again. It is not sad. That is the thing. It is not sad. Sad is a feeling that exists in relation to something that might have been different. This is beyond sad. This is the place where music goes when it has nothing left to prove and nothing left to protect, and is simply, finally, itself. The hymn fills the air above the water. You play. The men play. The ship goes down. The music stops when the water makes it impossible to play, not before. You do not stop before the water makes it impossible. This is a decision you make without making it, the decision your body makes for you by continuing. The bow moving, the fingers finding the positions, the music coming out, until the deck is no longer a deck you can stand on, and the instrument is no longer an instrument you can hold. The men scatter, not in panic. There is a strange calm to it, the calm of people for whom the situation has passed beyond the point where panic serves any purpose. Jock says something to you, a word or two, and you hear his voice but not the words, and you respond, and then the water is between you and him, and you are alone with the violin in your hands. The ocean is very loud now, and this is the thing that surprises you, the noise of it, the particular sound of a ship going down, which is nothing like what you would have imagined if you had imagined it, which you had not. Metal sounds you have no reference for, the water sounds, the sounds of 1,500 people in the water that you will not describe to yourself in words, will not name, will simply receive and carry. The violin is still in your hands. You think, this is the last thing I will have played. You think, it was enough. It was more than enough. The water is at your chest. It is so cold that it takes your breath in a way that breathing cannot fix. A cold that goes past sensation into something else. Something that is not pain exactly, but is the body's absolute response to a temperature it was not built to survive. You think of Maria. You think of Brighouse. You think of your father's hands on the violin, showing you where to put your fingers, and the terrible sound that came out, and the fact that you did not put it down. The last thing you feel is the music still in your hands. Not a sound. The violin is gone. The bow is gone. The music is gone. But the muscle memory of it, the 30 years of playing that have become the way your hands understand the world, is still there. Your fingers know the positions. Your arm knows the bow. Somewhere in the dark of the North Atlantic, in the first cold hours of April 15th, 1912, those hands go still. The music does not. There is a woman in Colne, Lancashire, who is waiting for you to come home. She is not yet awake, and it is the middle of the night in England, and she is sleeping the ordinary sleep of a person who has no reason yet to know that anything has changed. She knows you are at sea. She always knows when you are at sea. The particular knowledge of a woman who loves a man whose work takes him away. The low background awareness of distance. But she is not worried. You have been at sea before and come home, and you will be at sea again and come home, and this crossing is nearly finished. Tomorrow you were supposed to dock in New York, and in a few weeks you would be home. She is sleeping. She does not know. In a few hours she will wake and make tea and look out the window at the Lancashire morning, and then the news will begin to arrive, in the particular slow, terrible way that news arrived in 1912. And the world she wakes up in will not be the world she went to sleep in. She will keep the violin case. This is the thing about Maria that you would want people to know, if you could tell them anything. She keeps the violin case. It is recovered from the ocean. Your body recovered too, and the case is with you because you had strapped it to your body in those last minutes. Whether to save it, or because it was simply where it had always been, against your body, an extension of you. And Maria keeps it for the rest of her life. A brown leather case with your name on the clasp. She never worries. She keeps the case. You wanted 3 more crossings. You wanted enough money and then a house in Yorkshire, and Maria in it, and music moving through the rooms of it every day for the rest of your life. Yet you wanted to play her the pieces you had been working on privately, the ones no audience had heard yet. You wanted ordinary mornings and the particular happiness of a life built carefully with someone you chose. You did not get these things. What you got was this. In the worst hours of the worst night, on a deck above freezing water in the middle of the North Atlantic, you played for people who had nothing else to hold on to, and they held on. They held on because of the music, your music. This is not nothing. This is not a small thing. You gave people the last beautiful thing they heard. Some gifts are given only once. You gave yours completely. Good night, Wallace. Good night. The water is still. The stars are very bright. Somewhere behind you, receding into the dark, is the music. It does not recede all the way. Music never does. Close your eyes. You played. A note of history. Wallace Hartley was born in Colne, Lancashire in 1878, the son of a choir master. He worked as a musician on several Cunard and White Star Line ships before being appointed bandmaster of the Titanic's orchestra for her maiden voyage. The Titanic carried 2 separate bands, a quintet and a trio, who normally perform separately. On the night of April 14th, all 8 musicians came together and played on the deck as the ship sank. None of them survived. What they played in the final minutes is disputed. The hymn, most commonly associated with the story, is Nearer My God to Thee, reported by several survivors. Others recalled a different hymn, Autumn. Some survivors said the band played ragtime and popular tunes throughout. That the truth may be that they played different things at different times over the roughly 2 hours they performed, and that the final piece, the piece that fixed itself in the memory of those who heard it, was the hymn. Wallace Hartley's body was recovered from the ocean 16 days after the sinking. He was still wearing his uniform. His violin case was strapped to his body. His funeral in Colne was attended by approximately 40,000 people. The streets of the town were lined for the entire route of the procession. He was 33 years old. His fiancée, Maria Robinson, never married. She kept Hartley's violin case until her death. In 2006, a violin was found in the case along with a note reading, "For Wallace, on the occasion of our engagement, from Maria." After years of authentication, the violin, a German-made instrument with Hartley's name inscribed inside, was sold at auction in 2013 for £1.45 million. The money went to a music charity. He done his duty. He played. Good night.